Welcome back to Rima Reads. So today I am going to go over my February wrap-up. I know it's a little bit late, but like better late than never, right? So in February I read 5 books, well technically 4 books and then like 8 volumes of a manga. So let's talk about it. The first book I read in the month of February was City of Blades by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book in the Divine Cities trilogy, and it follows the character of Mulagish, who is a side character in the first book. She is a retired general, like just chilling on an island, relaxing, struggling through her PTSD when there's an issue with her pension, and so she's kind of forced to work a couple more months to get her full pension. And so she gets sent to this city, I don't remember its name, but it's the City of Blades. So she gets sent to the city to basically investigate the disappearance of one of the scientists there. And basically, it's another mystery. I can't really say too much without giving spoilers to the first book if you haven't read City of Stairs. But I really enjoyed City of Blades. I liked it more than City of Stairs. This one, I found the character of Mulagish much more relatable than the character of Shara. Like, Shara was fine, she's interesting, but I never really felt for her. I really felt for Mulagish at a lot of points in this book, so she was much more relatable. And I thought the mystery was just as good as the first book. This one had a bit more horror elements in the mystery, which I thought was pretty cool. I was not scared, so I thought it was cool. And it definitely has a bit of a faster pace because the first book spends a lot of time world building, because the world in the Divine Cities trilogy is pretty expansive, and there's a lot of history that you have to go through with this world of a continent where there used to be divinities and now they've all been murdered off, and the continent's been taken over by the Saipurs, and this their whole power dynamic. There's a lot of building that they had to do in the first book, which this book I didn't think needed to spend as much time on that, and so therefore we got into the story a bit quicker. So overall, I really liked City of Blades. I think I put it as a similar rating to City of Stairs of 4 stars, but I did like it slightly better than City of Stairs. And then the next book I read was City of Miracles by Robert Jackson Bennett, which is the 3rd book in the series. It takes place 13 years after the events of City of Blades, and it follows Sigrid, who is a character in both of the other 2 books. One of the main characters, but he hasn't had a whole book of POVs. And this book follows him. I really cannot say much about the plot at all without spoilers for the other books, and so I'm not even going to mention the plot. But again, I really liked this book. Thought Sigrid was an interesting character, and we meet him in the other 2 books and he's very, very interesting, so to get a whole book of him was a good time. I think my favorite part of City of Miracles was actually the ending. I thought Robert Jackson Bennett did a really, really good job of wrapping up this series. It was super dramatic, but interesting and epic, and I really liked what he did with the end of this series. And so I ended up giving City of Miracles 4.5 stars. Yeah, so overall, I think the Divine Cities trilogy is a good series. It is a very solid fantasy series. That's kind of what I feel about it. Just if you want some solid fantasy, the Divine Cities trilogy is solid fantasy. The next book I read in February was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. And I feel this book was 4 books in one, kind of weaved together to tell a story, and I really, really liked that. So the first story in this book was actually the life of Henrietta Lacks, who was a poor Black woman in the 1900s who had cancer, and basically her cells were taken from her without any permission, and then those cells ended up being very scientifically important. And so part of this book tells the story of Henrietta Lacks's life, who she was, her family life, what happened to her, how she dealt with her battle for cancer. So it's just a story of her life. The second part of this book was the medical history of the HeLa cells. So the cells that were taken from her were dubbed HeLa, and they are very scientifically important cells. So it kind of talks about the science behind those cells and then what those cells ended up accomplishing, like the discoveries that happened because of those cells, and like how it's kind of changed science and medical biology and all of that stuff. And then the third part of this story is actually following like Rebecca Skaloot and her like discovery with the HeLa cells, and her like talking to Henrietta Lacks' family, and then like their story. So it's all like the descendants of Henrietta Lacks and Rebecca Skaloot like trying to piece together this story. And then the fourth part of this book is the ethics behind everything that happened. It's talking about like medical philosophy, I guess, about like, is it ethical to take someone's cells without their permission, use them? What if it saves lives? Is it ethical for those cells to be sold and make, you know, companies millions of dollars while Henrietta Lacks' family like literally can't afford insurance? So it talks about all of that stuff. And I, if you can't tell, really liked this book. I thought it was great. Rebecca Skaloot's writing was really easy to follow, even when she was talking about all of this like medical history and science and stuff like that. Like, it was easy to follow, and I hate biology. Like, I'm a physics girl, not a bio girl. And so it was still very, very easy to follow. It was interesting, and I think it's an important story to be told. So I gave this book 5 stars. Highly recommend this book. So after that, I kind of fell into a reading slump. I like started 3 books and did not finish any of them. I was #struggling. And so I ended up picking up a manga, because let me tell y'all, manga will help when you are in reading slumps. So the manga I ended up picking up was Colette wa Shinu Koto ni Shitta by Yukimura Alto. This manga translates to Colette Decides to Die, which I know sounds pretty dark, but it's not. It's real cute, y'all. It's real cute. It's about this girl, Colette, who is the doctor of her village, and she's like super, super overworked. Like, people always bothering her. She literally has no time to herself. And so one day she decides to jump down this well, and instead of dying, she ends up in the underworld, but alive in the underworld. And she meets Hades, who's like this hot man, and he ends up being sick. And so she like starts helping him and basically learns her love of being a doctor. And then like the rest of the volumes kind of take place of her like above ground, like helping out her village, and then her jumping down this well to like hang out with Hades. And it's like real cute, y'all. It's so cute. I really enjoyed this manga. I read like 8 volumes, 9 volumes. I can't remember how many are out, but I read all of the volumes that are out. It's really cute. It's fun. I like the whole Hades thing, and then they bring in some of the other gods occasionally. And I like the time that she spends above ground in her village. Also, sometimes I'm like, let me just see the cute romance when I'm reading shoujo manga, but I actually liked seeing the, you know, other stuff in this manga as well. So overall, it's real cute. I really, really enjoyed it. And it got me out of my reading slump. And so the next and last book I read in the month of February is Black Sun by Rebecca Romanhorse. This book was the Shelf Space Discord server book of the month. And so it was really, really fun buddy reading it with all my Shelf Space friends. And basically it takes place in this like pre-Columbian fantasy inspired world, which is super cool. I don't think I've ever read anything in like a pre-Columbian fantasy inspired world. And it follows like 3 main point of view characters. So the first character is Narumpa, who basically was kind of born in the slums of the city of Tova and has risen up to the position of the Sun Priest. And she is basically dealing with like a whole lot of politics and stuff of people in the priesthood conspiring against her, and her like trying to figure out a mystery of what's going on. And then the next character we follow is Seipuru, who is basically he has a destiny. and his destiny is supposed to be fulfilled on the day of the Black Sun, as they call it in this book, the Convergence. And so he's basically like a chosen one, and his goal is to get to the city of Tova by the Convergence so he can fulfill his destiny. And then the third character is Zalia. She's like a thief pirate lady who's super badass, and I love her. And she has this really cool like magical ability to like basically sing and control like the weather, and it's really awesome. I really liked her magical ability, and basically she gets hired to take Saepuru to the city of Tova by the day of the Convergence. I really enjoyed this book a lot. Like, the world building in this book I thought was so cool. The first chapter is super dramatic that it'll pull you in right away, and I found it just to be like such an easy read. I think Narunpa was the weakest character at the beginning for me to follow, but by the end you get really invested in her storyline. But Saepuru and Zyla, you like immediately like them. At least I immediately liked them and was drawn into their stories. The one disappointment I had with this book was actually the ending. Like, this book basically builds up to the day of the Convergence, the day of the solar eclipse. Like, every chapter starts with, like, 10 days before the solar eclipse, 5 days before the solar eclipse, or 10 days before the Convergence, 5 days before the Convergence. So, like, you're anticipating, like, oh my god, what's gonna happen on the Convergence? Like, shit is about to go down. And then it, like, doesn't at the end. I feel like the end of this book was set up for the next book, which is fine, but the premise did not allude to the fact that it would be a letdown of a, like, climax. Like, since this book had in the beginning of every chapter, like, countdowns to the Convergence, since Convergence was such a big, like, driving force in this book, you expect something big to happen then. And when it didn't, I was, like, disappointed. I think if they did, like, if Rebecca Roanhorse didn't count down to the Convergence, I wouldn't have been so disappointed in the ending. So, like, that is the main reason that I can't give this book 5 stars. Like, it dropped down to a 4.5 for me, is because of my disappointment in the ending of the book. That being said, I still think it's, like, an amazing book. Like, the world building is super cool, the characters are really interesting, and it's just like an easy book to get through, even though it's an entirely like new world that I've never really read about at all. I basically like flew through this book. I read it so quickly, and I was very interested in knowing what was going to happen next. And so I really enjoyed Black Sun. 4.5 stars out of 5 stars, and I'm rather disappointed I can't give it the full 5 because of that ending, but I think the next book is going to be amazing, and I'm very excited to see what happens, because this book was basically set up for the next book. And I'm very sad that I'm gonna have to wait for however many years for the next book to come out. So that was my February wrap up. I'm fairly happy with the amount of books I read, even though I DNF'd like 3 books. It is what it is. Hope you guys all enjoy this video. Let me know if you've read any of those books and if you have any thoughts. And thank you all so much for watching. Bye!